Everybody. Hello. It's been a couple of weeks, but I am back doing the 15-minute live Q&A session in the free Facebook group. If you are not in the free Facebook group, if you're watching this from YouTube, then please do check out the details about how to join the group in the comments below. Right, so this is how it works. Every Friday at 1 o'clock, I try as much as I possibly can to get online in order to be able to answer some of your collie-related questions. This is something that my Collie Culture Club students, they get me for an hour each week via a Zoom session, and I answer questions that way. But I'm conscious that not everybody is part of my training community, so this is my little way of trying to cover some questions for you if you're not part of that community. So I have 3 questions for today that people have put in the comments underneath a post that I put up yesterday asking for questions. So we're going to set our 15-minute Alexa timer, and then we're going to get into it. And I'm going to answer just as much as I possibly can in the 15 minutes. All right? Alexa, timer for 15 minutes, please.
15 minutes starting now.
All right, we're good to go. So the first question comes from Lorraine, and actually it's very similar to Amanda's question, which comes in second, but I'll start with this one. So, hi, Jake is Collie Cross Kelpie, and he's 2 years old. My problem is cars. No matter what I've tried, he's still reactive to them. He's fine off lead, recall's good. He's fine walking on lead, although it's not perfect loose lead. Although not perfect, it's loose lead. It's not loose lead. Where I live, we have to walk down a lane with no paths, so cars pass by quite close. He has his tail tucked under and is alert mode throughout the walk. He wants to collapse to the floor and lunges at the cars as they pass. It mainly happens when the cars are from behind rather than ahead. I have focus and control with almost everything else, just not this. So, Lorraine, really common problem. So, in that respect, please know that you are not the only one struggling with this. Now, one of the resources that is available within the Facebook group, if you have a look under the announcement section, you'll see that one of the, there's 2 resources that I created. One was an ebook which explains a little bit more about how I suggest dealing with this, and I'm going to go into the information in that in just a bit more detail. But there is also a tracker, all right, a traffic reactivity tracker, and the idea of it is that we look to really make notes about what our dog can and cannot do. And you've got a pretty good idea based on some of the stuff that you've told me already. But one of the things that we're aiming for is more positive experiences than negative ones, because when we are asking our dogs to do something like walk along a lane that they find difficult, we want to know that they have a bank of positive experiences to draw upon that will support them in what they consider to be a difficult situation. So that's one of the first things that I would encourage you to go and look at. So if you go to the featured section, I think it's called the announcement section now in Facebook, have a look under there and you will find some information on both the car chasing ebook, but also the traffic tracker as well. Now, in terms of my advice when it comes to this kind of thing, one of the things that I was just talking to one of my students about just this past week actually was that walking along a lane with cars coming backwards and forwards, I think is what I would describe as a university or a PhD level question for most dogs. And the reason for that is that they are so close. They don't have like a specific pavement that they know that they're supposed to stay on the pavement and that will keep them away from the cars. We can't necessarily predict when cars are going to happen, so there's quite an unpredictable rhythm to whether the cars are coming or going. Speed and things, obviously, even on a busy road, we can't necessarily guarantee that. But if we're, say, walking along a steady 30-mile-an-hour type road where we know that cars are going to keep coming, one after the other, and generally speaking, the traffic is moving around 30-35 miles an hour, then from our border collies perspective, that's much more predictable. And that's why I say that a single track road where there's no pavement and there's no space to move away, that's why I would say that this particular challenge is very difficult for any dog, but particularly for herding breeds such as our border collies, or in this case Collie Kelpie Cross. So one of the first things that I would look to do is really dive into his loose lead walking, because one of the things that boy dogs I think particularly can sometimes struggle with is body awareness. And one of the things about teaching loose lead walking, which I've said before about, is that it's really difficult. Like, it's much harder than people give it credit for, really, because what we're asking our dogs to do, they're a four-legged animal and we're a two-legged animal. And depending on, how quickly we walk, they often have to adjust their stride in order to be able to match ours to keep everything on a loose lead. And we often go from, say, a quiet puppy class, maybe with not very much else going on, or maybe we haven't even done puppy class, maybe we've just done some loose lead walking around our home and in our garden. And then we take them into these big situations, such as I've described, like a university or a PhD level situation, where our dog just doesn't really have enough education for the situation. So the homework that I have for my students is to think about different locations, and we're going to be doing a 5-day challenge at the end of the month. And if you're around to join that, then I'd highly recommend you do come and join us for that, because some of the tasks that I get you to do are to think about what environments for your dog, and this will look different from each dog, but for your dog, what environments class as a reception school environment, what classes as a sort of primary school level environment, and so on and so forth, all the way up to PhD and university level. And the thing that I'm aiming to do is to start getting some really good behaviours in the lower grades, if you like, but also working on the ability to move them from one grade to another by bringing in resources from that sort of I can control, but I can make the environment more challenging. So, for example, if I have a dog that loves tennis balls, for example, that gets their adrenaline up and it makes it difficult for them to be able to hear when this little yellow globe comes out in front of them. Let's say I'm in a reception school environment, my living room at home. Everything is very relaxed. I'm in my pajamas and I've got my dressing gown on, and as I say, reception school environment. And then I say to the dog, okay, I want you to do some loose lead walking around the coffee table, but I'm going to go and put that tennis ball just out of reach over here. Can you still do your loose lead walking? Now, there's an awful lot of border collies I know that would turn around and go, no, Auntie Gemma, I can't, because there's a tennis ball over there and I love tennis balls. So to give you it's just one example, and there's many others that I could come up with, but if our dog struggles with something like that, you can then well see why, when we give them something which is not only something that we would maybe define as a distraction, but the reason it's a distraction is probably because they find it overwhelming. So on a single track road, they're on the same road as that vehicle, so there is both the sound of it coming, there's the movement of it coming past, but there's also the vibration in the road as well. As that vehicle comes past, there's the vibration of the vehicle as it goes past you. So it's probably something that his whole system goes a little bit into red alert when it happens. So my goal would be a few things. One would be to think about that training of loose lead walking and really taking it back to basics and seeing what it looks like in lower level environments and working up from that point. Looking specifically at traffic environments, so coming up with a list of environments where I could go and practice my homework. So things like, big supermarket car parks are a good place to start. Some of my students have quite rightly pointed out, and you don't think about it until you're doing the practice, but places like Lidl or Aldi, there's a lot of traffic going in and out quite quickly, and they tend to be smaller car parks. Whereas if you go to somewhere like a big Sainsbury's or a big Tesco, which has it's one of the bigger superstores, then there tends to be a quieter area of the car park, and that's a really good place to start with dogs that are worried about traffic. And then, in those types of environments, we know that the traffic is going to be going a bit, more slowly, but we can also then, set up in similar situations to that our dog is struggling with, but we can build them up to that point. So if I had a dog that I knew, for example, like you've mentioned, Jake really struggles with traffic coming behind, then what I could do is I could set myself up by the entrance to one of the supermarkets, so that as cars are coming in, I can have my back to them and I can practice, some of our loose lead walking whilst that's happening. So lots of potential training ideas to support you in that. But I would also, as well, one of the things about sort of collie culture land, as I think of us, is we think about kind of a holistic approach, and we think about the fact that actually, if the dog is worried about this particular scenario, how can I soothe his nervous system at the same time as offering him a different way of being in that environment? And this is where we bring in people like Holly Barker, who's a canine nutritionist. She comes and talks to the group once a month. She's joining us next week, actually. And one of the first things that she would get us thinking about is the addition of chamomile as a supplement to our dog's diet, to be able to help, reduce some of that anxiety in those particular scenarios. So essentially, lots of good stuff that we could work on to improve the situation. And I know it's possible, because I know that my own students have managed to achieve some really, really positive results. So please keep the faith. And as I say, there's some ideas for you. And if you can join us for the 5-day challenge at the end of the month, then I would suggest that would be a really good starting place. Right, okay, I'm going to move on to Amanda's question next. And she said basically the same as Lorraine, so what we've discussed with the cars, plus shadow chasing. I have been muzzle training so I can get her to the vet. Went on Monday to make sure she's not in pain. Unfortunately, the vet was unable to get near her. She's offered pain meds just in case. Urine sample was good. We're fine with traffic in a car park, and we went to a country show with lots of cars driving in a field. We walk along a canal where an A road runs parallel at 40 miles an hour, and she can see the traffic in parts and doesn't bat an eyelid. But if we walk through the quiet industrial estate, she is bothered by traffic 300 plus metres away at the end of the road. Reactions are the same as Lorraine's dog, and she's also a Collie Kelpie Cross, 14 months old. So in relation to the traffic things, one of the things that quite often happens with dogs that are reactive to traffic in some situations and not others is, one, it can be because they are focused on something else in one environment over another. So, for example, you mentioned about going along the canal. So it's perfectly possible that there's so much going on around the canal that actually that takes her mind off the fact that there's the road running alongside. Plus the fact, if there's a steady stream of traffic, that's quite different to being in say, a quiet industrial estate where everything is quiet. Now that noise at the end of the industrial estate, where we can hear that sort of buzzing at the end, that can potentially be much more worrying to a dog. So that can sometimes explain the difference as to why they react in some situations and not others. But you do mention the shadow chasing as well. And one of the guest speakers that we've had come and talk to our students before is another Border Collie specialist. And she's a behaviourist. And she comes in and talks to the group. And she's come in and talked specifically about shadow chasing and other sort of repetitive behaviours. Sorry, that was the word I'm looking for, repetitive behaviours. And I will see if I can just typically no, it's Rachel. Sorry, Rachel, if you're watching this back, I'm sorry. I couldn't for a minute there remember your name at all. Rachel came in and talked to us about this problem. And in 80% of the cases, when she talked through 80% of the cases that she ever works with that have behavioural issues such as this, 80% of those cases there is some sort of underlying pain or gut health issue. And so one of the things that I think is a really useful thing is that they've suggested pain meds just in case. What I would say is sometimes the type of pain meds they put them on can be helpful, and then others can be non-helpful. One of the things that might be worth considering is whether or not a canine massage specialist or someone that can take a bit more time than a vet can in a vet consultation appointment. It might be worth trying to build a relationship with somebody like that, because they may have more luck in being able to put hands on her and figuring out a little bit more about what's going on. The other thing that is always worth doing for all of our dogs is to get video of us handling our dogs in their environment at home. So we have my friend Tina Constance, who's a Tellington Touch specialist. She has, or the Tellington Touch practitioners use something that they call the traffic light zone system, where you take a piece of paper and you have a left-hand side of a dog and a right-hand side of a dog, and you take 3 colours, green, orange and red, and you look to colour in the either side of the dog with where they're happy to be touched. So green is where they're happy to be touched. And when I say happy, this would be, my Summer would be a good example. If you're stroking her and you stop stroking her, she'll be like, excuse me, and she'll stick her nose underneath and try and get you to stroke her head again. She enjoys that touch, so that would be a green. Now an orange touch would be if you were touching her on somewhere that she wasn't so keen on, she would probably stand still and let you do it, but she wouldn't then, if you stopped, she wouldn't re-engage that contact. And then Red, depending on the dog, would look like if you went to touch them there, they would either move away from you, or if they couldn't move away from you, they might escalate to showing you, a little collie grin, or worse still, they'd be looking to snap. So doing that, that traffic light zone piece of paper as some homework would be a good idea, but also videoing yourself doing it as well. One of the things that my students found when they were having a go at it, and we actually used vodka as a demonstration of how slowly and how carefully you should do it, was that when they run over the dog quickly, what we often see is that the dog gets really worked up and they look like they're happy and excited and things, but actually they are perhaps just filling themselves up on adrenaline and they're not giving us a true picture of how they feel. So using the back of our hand and stroking with the back of our hand as opposed to using the front side and the flat of our hand can make a difference to getting a better read on that. Yeah, that I think would be very useful, because I think particularly with the shadow chasing, there may be something still there. It may be something that was there and hasn't gone away, but I think definitely that requires a bit more further investigation. And somebody like a canine massage therapist, a canine osteopath, somebody like that who can potentially spend a bit more time with your dog, I think might get a better chance of checking them over than maybe your vet has managed to do so far. Oh, bother! That is my 15-minute timer. It's just gone off. So, Nikki, I'm sorry I haven't got to your question today, but I will put it at the top of my list to answer when I see everybody next Friday. You mentioned it's about reactivity to some dogs. There are some resources about reactivity which you can find in the announcement section of the Facebook group. If you can wait until next Friday, then I will get to your question next Friday. But other than that, if you want to go and do some research, that's where the reactivity resources will be kept. All right, thank you for joining me today. Hope that you have a good week with your Border Collies, and we're heading into a nice weekend here in North Somerset. The sun is out, although I do think a little bit more rain is predicted. Definitely feeling very September here in the UK. All right, have a good one, and I look forward to catching up with you next week. Take care. Bye.